Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We are back. Sorry for the, it was a logistical issue for the last couple days last week. And, a lot of not a lot of news was coming out but over the weekend and some things going on with, certain situations in the league. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to start our team previews, which will last probably until the beginning of the regular season. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So I have to say, and Kevin probably agree with this, when you watch baseball, you always, once in a while, you see something you haven't seen before. But it's usually it's once in a while.
I know what you're going to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that, no, I don't know. But I would say this year there has been more of that than I've ever seen in the game. Maybe because of lack of fundamentals, maybe because of just the way it's changed. I mean, just in the last week, I saw a throw from shortstop and an umpire get hit in the face with the throw. That's how far the throw was off to the point where the first baseman didn't even have a chance at it, and it hits the umpire right in the eye. So that happened. Off to the point where you see plays at home plate now where catchers don't even know how to tag a guy anymore, and basically players are just trying to outsmart them, base runners, at the plate, and you see that. Holding tags, that doesn't happen anymore. Now you see on the replay, nope, he didn't hold the tag, see, or guy didn't hold his foot.
How about
the bag? It's just unbelievable.
How about a catcher who doesn't know how to catch a pop-up?
Well, you have that too.
Or a second baseman who isn't sure whether he caught the ball on a line drive or not and throws it to first. And in both instances, the pop-up and the line drive, it led to the opposition scoring multiple runs and the team losing games. So, yes, there's definitely a lack of fundamentals, Kevin. What was the one that you were going to point out?
Well, actually mine was in football. But with regard to what Russ is talking about in the catcher, it's funny, but I just happened to be watching a game where they went into discussion about, how challenging it is now for catchers not to violate the non-blocking in the play.
Right.
You couple that with the fact that, the days of Roberto Clemente and Al Kaline throwing it on a line right to home plate where it's right at your chest level and then you can apply the tag or over. It comes in on 3 hops and it's usually up the line a little bit or behind you. And so you're doing acrobatics to catch the ball, and then you've got to figure out how to apply a tag. And as Russ said, he's right on. They've become very smart at hook slides and, avoiding those sweeping tags. And, catchers are worried about, getting called for blocking the play. But I was thinking, the one I was thinking about was in football. When I've never seen this before. The University of Michigan football team was penalized to 5 yards for having 2 number 1s on the field at the same time. And it's all because, as everyone may or may not know, NCAA rosters, because of COVID, of having guys that, are back that wouldn't normally be, they have rosters that are like 130 people.
Right.
Because all those walk-ons have come back 2 years with the walk-ons and so forth. So,
can't the jerseys go over 99 or?
No, they can't go over 99. So you're repeating. I mean, they've been repeating for years, but it's never been a problem because they had 105 or whatever. So you ended up with just a few guys, and you can be careful. Well, now you got 35 guys that have the same number as another person. So I'm sure though it'll happen again. But the announcer and the analyst said they had never seen it either. And I didn't even know that. It makes sense that that's on the book, but I didn't know that it was on the book. So,
well, to go along with the jersey thing, it's really weird to look at the NFL now and to see linebackers wearing single digits. They've all of a sudden allowed players to wear whatever number that they want. I remember linebackers used to be in the 50s or 60s, and the offensive linemen the same thing. And now it's like you have Emmanuel Sanders, the Bills wide receiver, wearing number 1, and then linebackers wearing number 8. It's sort of weird to see, Russ. I mean,
it happened because they started running out of numbers because they had numbers designated for positions. So like a quarterback couldn't wear anything above like 13
Right.
And receivers couldn't wear, so like when they started to do that, that was okay. But then what happened was teams had too many numbers retired because they have such big rosters, more than most sports. They all have these Ring of Honors. And then all of a sudden they started running out of numbers. So now they did decide, let's switch that up. And then guys like Tom Brady complained because it's like he can't identify what a guy is on the field. But it's like, hey, how about just looking where they are on the field and what position and not worrying about what number they wear? So that's become a thing now.
We actually, and you may have forgotten, or again, you're just a few years younger than me, but in the 70s, when defenses, it was popular to use like a Wolfman, who was kind of a half linebacker, half safety, or they called them different things in different cities. Well, then those guys usually, not always, but sometimes would wear odd numbers to kind of show that they played that kind of off.
Yeah, see, I didn't catch on to that when I was young. I didn't.
Brad Van Pelt for the.
He wore 10.
Yeah, he wore 10.
That's a good
right.
point. Yeah,
he was a hybrid a little bit. He wasn't quite the traditional. They call him something. It was Wolfman here in Michigan, but it was something else.
I do remember Ben Pelt very well.
The other thing, and okay, this is going to go on all year, and I know it's going to annoy me, and I hate players that do it, but the NFL came out this year and made specific rules regarding taunting, that they weren't going to stand for even the most innocuous thing. So one of the Bills' defensive backs stops a player, a Dolphins receiver, on third down, makes a nice play, and he goes like this, like in his face, over top of him, and then steps over him and gets a 15-yard penalty, and then Miami gets a first down. How many times do they have to beat it into the head of these players not to do this crap? Because it's okay, celebrate a touchdown, whatever, but the taunting, the in-your-face stuff, the bravado, yes, it's the no fun league, and I don't like that. But you know what? If the league sets the rules, don't do it.
Yeah, I tell you, why they don't stop though? It's because coaches tolerate that. They like that. They think it's the bravado, and they like the cockiness of it. Like if they wanted it out of the game, coaches could take it out in a minute.
But do they like the 15-yard penalty?
No, they don't. They don't like the 15-yard penalty. But I think that they allow more of that because I think they think that it helps their players. It gets them fired up, and there are a lot of top players are taunters.
They want their players confident.
Listen, Eck is a taunter on this show. He should get.
Yeah, one more thing before we go on high, because I wanted to get whether Russ has noticed this too. At the risk, again, I always need to point out that I get into my Mike Agello zone when I'm into the, it's a very scary place in there. Although I like to think, a lot of Mike's stuff is just what I would consider like not just too trivial for me to get worked up about. But anyway, I'm part of a Facebook page where they have collectibles and so forth. And I'm always just amazed and amused and a little bit irritated that every time somebody puts something up that they're asking the community to comment on, and it's usually something they found in their grandfather's attic or whatever, the immediate response from the vast majority of people is, it's fake. Yeah. Like, and it's fake. It's fake. Somebody's done this. And, it may well be fake. I have no idea. But that's the thing. Like, I don't have any idea, and they don't have any idea. Right. But that's the initial response.
You're right about that.
Yeah. It's fake.
Internet's such a happy place, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm going, good heavens. You know what I mean? Like,
such a caring, forgiving.
Some people are looking for legit advice, and you don't want to tell them to say.
Well, and then it happens. Like, Russ, if you're on these, you'll know that happens. Then there will be people with great knowledge who will suddenly, enter into. That's what I like about Twitter on. First there's a bunch of idiots that just want to debate it, and then someone with some knowledge will come in and give an explanation, especially on the rules, if we're a rule interpretation. somebody will say, I'm a referee here, and this is actually the rule, and then it becomes really, really worthwhile and interesting.
Yeah.
But initially, it's I'm just it's fake.
It's fake. Oh yeah, that's ridiculous. Nope, wrong. I know, it's the internet. It's a fun place to be. It's a fun place to live. Okay, let's start. Here we go. Ready? Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 20th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and it's election day in Canada, so go out and vote the right way.
Vote the right way? I'm not sure what that
Mike can
means.
get back into games.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen from Hockey Buzz, and what Mike is talking about is if the Conservatives get in, people think the borders will be open.
Oh. So it's Mike's way. It's not necessarily the right way.
It is the right way, but it's actually the wrong way if you're Russ or me or Eklund.
What might be wrong for Canada might be right for Mike. In other words, we're saying.
That's exactly right.
Anyway, all right. And I'm Eklund.
I've been exposed.
That was your political commentary for today. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday. Doesn't really get involved with politics too often, but keeps you up to date on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And Kevin wrote a really good article that we're going to start with because this is actually comes to the latest returning to the NHL, and that is Zdeno Chara, who is back. And I love the way how you put this, Kev, because it's so crazy true that Lamoriello always has like the one more card to play thing, and this is it.
Well, yeah, and it's been people have said, I've seen it written that well, he's 78 years old, he's pushing all of his chips in. Well, this is the way he did it when he was 40.
Sure.
This is no different. No. He always has had like an extra card to play, and doing at least one thing. And like I'm sure Lou would say, like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to at least try. And I think that's what stops a lot of GMs is fear of it not working. But guys who are really good at their jobs, they don't worry about whether something won't work. They're more interested in is, well, what if it does work? So I and would you be stunned if Zach Parise got 20 goals, or if Zdeno Chara ended up performing quite well as the third pairing defenseman?
It was good for Washington last year. I mean, Chara was fine, and
that's what I think too. So
well, I mean, I like what the Islanders did this offseason. They really doubled down on their existing roster. I mean, there was a little bit of change that they had to trade Leddy. They lost Eberle in the expansion draft, but they re-signed Palmieri. It would be nice if Lou would announce the contract of Zach Parise. He says he's there, but it hasn't been announced yet. We don't know how much he's making or Chara, but I think overall, they brought 85% of the team back, and they've signed players to extensions, and now they bring in a grizzled veteran in Parise, I think still has something left, and Chara. And I was talking to Russ about this. Chara fits perfectly on the bottom pairing, playing with Noah Dobson, a young defenseman, and he can sort of caretaker him like he did with McAvoy in Boston, like he did with Torrey Krug for a while, like he did for Dougie Hamilton. It's a winning formula, and he played well with Washington last year. I wanted Toronto to go out and get Chara because I thought a veteran guy in the bottom pairing is what they needed. He probably didn't want to play in Canada, but I think it's a really good move for it.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know when Lou exactly started talking to Chara. That's what I'd be interested in knowing, because I took Chara at his word that it really wasn't his plan to return where he started. And I do think it just sort of worked out this way. But I do think Lou was probably looking at the same thing we did at that schedule and saying, with all these road games, with who I have on the blue line, with some young players and some age, this is a guy who could really help us in the locker room and help steady the ship on those first 13 games that are going to be brutal. And I think that really does play into it. I really do.
And when you look at his Lou Lamoriello's salary cap situation, and you think back where they were, like his salary cap is a work of art this season. Because you looked about all the problems, what he was going to be able to do. How many people wrote, "There's no way he'll be able to keep Palmieri," and he moved out the guys that he thought they could live without Letty. They didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign him next season, and I think that hurts them a little bit. Honestly, Letty is the one guy who does some things that they don't have a lot of guys who can do. But he's got all of his guys back, and I think they'll be better offensively because Barzal will be better next year, and Palmieri will have a whole season as well. Everybody said he was going to lose Bellows because he was going to have to pay him as a price to get Seattle. Bellows is still there,
he hasn't signed yet, but he's still there. Yeah,
but he will be. So the thing about it is Lamoriello just does a very good job of managing his salary cap and getting the most out of it and squeezing everything. And I do like Mike's use of the phrase grizzled veteran. It reminds me of when I was a kid, when everybody wrote, use those kind of, instead of saying he got a basket, he scorched the twine in basketball. Or the corded cottage was the net in hockey. I remember
betwixt the wickets. Yes.
I think he did sacrifice Devin Taves along the way. I mean, we have to talk about that.
That wasn't this year though. But yes,
that wasn't this year. But to get to this salary cap where he's at now, that was one of his bigger sacrifices.
But I do think, and if you remember, Lou even said that. I think that was one that hurt him because he couldn't figure out how not to lose him.
Right.
Like everything else. Like I think he accepted the fact that he was going to lose Letty, and he made that deal. I think he did not want to lose Taves, and I think he did try to figure out how to keep him, and he couldn't do it, and I think it bugged him.
I'll just make the quick point that, ironically, I saw Scotty Bowman at the Sabres scrimmage this weekend, and like Bowman, where the only place that he didn't have success was Buffalo. He got to a Stanley Cup final or won a Stanley Cup in every destination he was at throughout his career. The only place that Lou didn't work his magic in terms of salary cap, being able to make things fit was Toronto. He left before he could do that, or wasn't proactive in doing it, and then ended up doing it with the Islanders. So
but don't you think that environment was against him doing that there? Like I
think even bigger than that, Kevin, is that environment that wasn't Lou's team. Like Lou needs complete control to do what he does. Like, he needs to be able to completely do what he does.
Well,
maybe Russ is right because when Austin Matthews was signing his ELC and Lou was not going to give him a Schedule A and Schedule B bonuses, and Brendan Shanahan said, give it to him because we need him in camp, that was an indication that he didn't have complete control.
Yep.
I get that.
Yeah. What you need is an environment where Lou can write down his offer on a napkin and walk up to you in the dressing room and say, hey, Austin, will this get it done? Just between me and you, can I call your agent on this? Like that. That sounds silly, but that's the kind of relationship he has with
again, we do have to say, to be fair, like every other GM in the league, he's got to win another cup soon. They've got like 2 years. They've got to at least get to the Stanley Cup. They don't win, you don't win. Sometimes you don't win.
And you're right about that, but he knows, like, he's gotten knocked out by the champion 2 years in a row.
Right.
And so you can then convince yourself or tell yourself, like, we're close. Like, we're really close.
And
like,
by one goal in a game 7, the last one. So
So that's why you just do everything this year. And if it doesn't work, well, at least you can say, look, I did everything.
Now, Ak, while we were on our little hiatus, there was a couple things with the unsigned restricted free agents that I think are notable. One, Jack Hughes was part of the NHL media tour and sort of threw some shade at the Vancouver Canucks regarding his brother Quinn.
Some shade? He said they weren't a good team.
Right. I was trying to be diplomatic there, Russ. I'm sorry.
That was pretty surprising, honestly. He's still a kid. As we saw he's still a kid to me. That's like a real kid.
The Canucks are not going to take it easy on him when they play the Devils.
The Canucks are a good team, and that's just and beyond that.
I like it. I do too. Use family standing together. More power to you.
Okay, well, it got worse with the Tkachuks.
Yeah, the other one was Brady Tkachuk announcing he's going to play in, I think it was Plymouth with the U.S. National Development Team, Russ, instead of heading to Ottawa, and then Matthew Tkachuk, again, I think shooting a few barbs at the Senators. Now, the funny thing is that the reports that are coming out, Pierre Maguire, who's the VP in Ottawa, said, we've had non-acrimonious discussions with Brady's side 4 or 5 times, but they're no closer to a deal. And you have to say, I would think that it's, Brady doesn't want 8 years, and if he does have to sign for 8 years, he wants a lot more money than $8 million a year. I mean, I don't know how far apart they are, but it would be done if they weren't far apart.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, talking to my sources, I've definitely heard that Brady, Tkachuk, and the Sens aren't that far apart, and I think it was written by some of the beat writers over the weekend too. That same thing, and our writer Kevin came out and said that I guess it was Friday, and then Bruce Garriak said it on Saturday morning. It's basically the same thing, that that they're not that far apart, and that a deal could get done. Also, what's his name? Another guy in Gord something.
Okay, but you know what?
In Ottawa, one of the radio guys, and I can't think of his name right now. Sorry, I apologize.
To me, not that far apart means Brady Tkachuk's going to go to Ottawa because in the next day or two, he knows he's going to be signed. Right. He's not going to be anywhere near Ottawa. So even if they sign him, So even if they sign him in 2 or 3 days and he's in St. Louis, he now has to go and get everything together. He's got to get his visa going. He's not going to make the start of camp even if they sign him now.
Yeah. And Bill Guerin quoted regarding Kaprizov, I'm disappointed that we don't have him signed, but we're not the only team in this situation. Training camp starts this week, and when it starts, we're going to focus on the guys we have here. This happens all the time, but we'll just have to move ahead. So not to say that they're not focused on this, but they
are. But
I'm getting more into the Brady thing for a second. It sounds like this. I thought it was a really well written article that Kevin had on this, which Kevin, our writer, had on this, which is really interesting. That he says mentioned a few days ago, the bonus structure of the contract and how much money will be backloaded are the issues that are holding up the agreement, according to what I've heard.
Sure.
But he says we all know management is very much against bonuses, going back to Danny Heatley deal years ago. I've said this over and over. Tkachuk needs to be signed by training camp. So this is typical. This is running into a spot where the bonus structures are not a good phrase in Ottawa. They never have been, right? And I agree with that.
Right, but again, how close could they be if this guy is in St. Louis? Well, he's in Michigan, and then he's going to St. Louis. He's not going to Ottawa.
Yeah, and I would think that Pierre Dorian and Eugene Melnyk should learn the lesson of Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues over the last couple of years, because they've been the ones who have been the biggest in terms of an anti-signing bonus. Well, that cost you Alex Pietrangelo. So you want to keep doing that, be my guest, but you're not going to have a winning team if you keep doing that. You pay the players and you pay them signing bonus, and in the current structure with 20% going to escrow, they want these contracts backloaded and not front loaded, because the player is going to get less if they front load the deal, because they're only getting 80% of what they're being paid the first couple of years.
Yeah, no, for sure. But then the Sens are also, from what I've heard, in a ticket selling pinch. So this is going to get scary for them if they don't get Tkachuk in. Tkachuk has to get signed, or else because from what I've heard, their renewals have been really lousy. And
just think about this, Zach.
Just has to happen.
They couldn't even send Tkachuk to the NHL's media thing. They sent Stützle and they sent Shabbat.
I know.
That's all well and good, but Tkachuk is the guy.
For sure.
He wasn't there.
For sure. Is there a history, Kevin, of guys who are out of contract going to that?
A history of what? I'm sorry.
So guys not under contract, not going to the media thing.
They usually don't. If they're not under contract, they usually don't go.
Right. Okay. So if they're still in negotiations and all that stuff, they'll stay.
Because they're going to get grilled on it otherwise.
Right. That's all they're going to answer. That's all they're going to be asked about. Again, that really kind of goes against. I mean, that media thing's put together by the PA and the NHL, and it really is supposed to be a positive situation. So, I guess that being not the greatest thing to have around.
Yeah.
A couple other notes. You're cutting in. Your audio's cutting in and out. So you a couple other notes. The AP reported that Jack Eichel will report to Sabres camp for physical. This is sort of a non-headline story because he has to. If he wants to get paid, he has to report to camp for a physical.
Right. Is there any chance he passes the physical based on the rehab he's done? There's still something in me, and I said it a long time ago. Like, there's this minuscule chance that they're going to be like, yeah, you can go out and play.
Oh boy. I don't know. Russ, if they do that, then they're saying that he's faking this, or they're saying he's over.
They're not saying it, but the doctor has to clear him or not clear him, right?
Because the doctor saying things, it's. I don't know. I don't think they can pass him. I don't think If
I think you're probably right, Eck, but I just think it's.
I hear you say it. It's an interesting thought because sure, if Sabres doctor says he has passed physical, then you're in a real spot, right? That definitely becomes an issue.
But my point here is that, after David Clarkson was traded to Columbus from Nathan Horton, and Nathan Horton was never going to play another NHL game, he had to go to Leafs training camp to get a physical for them to basically say he can't play because of his back. So any player who's under contract has to go camp, and he's under contract, so he has to go camp.
The only difference was Nathan Horton was never skating on the ice, and we know that Jack Eichel had done some skating.
Right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't bring it up at all.
Right.
How's this microphone now? Are we okay? Was it good?
Yes, it's good. It was okay. Two for a second, but now it's good.
Yeah, it wasn't on the right thing.
The other medical situation that was updated was Jonathan Drouin did some media in Montreal and said that it was anxiety and insomnia issues that kept him off the ice last season, and that he should be good for training camp and for playing this year. So, and that's one player that was missing from the Canadians for the last, I think, quarter of the season and the playoffs that they'll have. And, I've been a critic of Drouin, but obviously there was something going on, and I have all the compassion for him. I hope he gets things straightened out. And, when he's right, he's a good player. It's just the Canadians have been an organization that have put him in a position to play a position that he doesn't play. He's not. He's a winner.
I think with this situation, and just having interviewed Drouin over the years, he would never say this if it really wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So I know it's real. And the thing is, if you think about it, none of us has slept perfect since the pandemic.
Nope.
Everybody's life has changed mentally. What you think about, what you dream about, what you do, all of that has changed for all of us. So I'm surprised more players haven't said this.
Russ, I haven't slept since my children were born. I'll throw that out. Since May 25th, 2002, I have not had a good rest. Yeah.
This was a little bit of a not a contention, but a little bit of a debating point between Russ and, as Russ leaves the room, but Nolan Patrick signed a 2-year deal with Vegas for $1.2 million per, which was basically the same amount that Kailer Yamamoto signed with Edmonton. Russ, about Nolan Patrick, the same amount as Yamamoto. And like I said, I think that Kelly McCrimmon thinks he got a bargain here because I think they're going to play him as a top 6 center. I don't know.
They're going to try him there, Mike, and he might play the part. But if he does no scoring like he did for the Flyers last year and really doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, they're going to regret signing him for that second year. That's my problem with this deal. The Yamamoto thing, we all know what Ken Holland did. He did it to kind of get past the cap, probably told Yamamoto, I got a deal set up for you. Just wait till next year. And Yamamoto's like, fine. For Nolan Patrick, he wasn't coming to the team until he got this extra security. And we know what the Patrick camp is sort of like. I think they think he's still better than what he's proved on the ice. Now, years ago, I thought Patrick was the better player than he's here, and he does have that talent, but he is yet to show it.
Right.
And for McCrimmon to take a chance like this, I get it. It's not a lot of money, but
I think it's a good risk.
But if it doesn't work, Eck, he is
no for sure. But it's still only 1 point. If you look at those two
but
deals,
you don't have the position filled either. It's much bigger than the money. It's all of a sudden you don't have the position filled, and now you've got to deal with Nolan Patrick, which you don't know what to do with.
Well, here's the thing about that. Patrick, we saw it last year in the beginning of the year when he was just coming off and just starting back again. I remember sitting, I think, socially distanced 30 feet away from you, Russ. on our card tables in the first level and like yelling to you. And Patrick looks really good out there, like and there were moments that you could see that he has, he's got that in him. I really hope he's got this together. Obviously, he's a player who was playing last year like he was afraid to get hurt, knowing that if he got another injury, that could be it. And I think that's where Patrick was at. Kind of reminded me of
that'll change mentally. Like he wasn't going to the net. He wasn't playing hard in the corners, and he was way too fancy on the ice. He was.
However, getting that second year allows him not to think that way a little bit. That I think that that's a big thing for him.
I'll tell you the biggest thing, and I spoke to other people about this, and they agreed in the Philly press box. He was trying to show off more skill than rather playing just regular simple hockey and trying to get points on the board. He was trying all these blind passes, drop passes, trying to be fancy when the Flyers needed goals and points.
And you never know, Russ. I mean, the migraine situation that he was having, maybe he, coming back from that, he's just been tentative, and that will pass with time. All I know is I look at that draft and I think, boy, Philadelphia, New Jersey, do they regret taking Hischier and Patrick and passing on Heiskanen, Makar, or Elias Pettersson?
Yeah, in retrospect. But again, we go back to the Devils. They took Hischier because they not only knew he would play in the NHL quickly, but they also knew they could market him. You can't market Heiskanen. You can't. They were interested in the full package, selling tickets and everything. If not, they probably would have gone for Heiskanen. It's not like they didn't know he was a great player, but they were looking for more than that.
Now, Kevin, speaking of marketing, the Arizona Coyotes announced today that they're going back to their original jerseys. And don't get me wrong, I like the jerseys. It'll look good on these players when they play in Houston in a couple years. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, can you get your priorities straight? Your organization is a train wreck, but let's announce our new jerseys.
Yeah. Well, I agree that they've been a train wreck this offseason, but life goes on. If you're the marketing guy, you can't concern yourself about that. You got to just do your job. So, I'm glad that they did that. The fans will appreciate that. The ones that are going to the games, and kind of we move on. But it's just a shame what the new ownership decided to do. And I don't even, if I could understand the strategy. Yeah, but they were close. They were knocking at the door. They played well last season, so
they did. I mean, and yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a case of controlling what you can control, right? They can control what uniforms they wear. So I think you go out there and they're gonna make, and they are the best Coyotes jerseys. I mean, there's no two ways about it in my mind, at least. I mean, they really are unique. They're. I mean, you spent time in Arizona, Kevin. They have the Arizona feel to them, which is really cool.
Right.
Which the other jerseys didn't feel like a team from Arizona. Those jerseys do, and I think.
But you know what? This feels like if this were a Netflix show, this feels like the Arizona Coyotes, the final season. Like that's what you would title it.
It's gonna look great on over the hill, Louis Erickson or Andrew Ladd. Really.
I know.
Do you think those guys are going to play?
That's a big question. Are either of them going to play? I think Andrew Ladd will play.
So.
No, I you know what's weird about them? I'm not going to say. I'm going to wait till I tell my story about them. Well, I've got something. But we're going to move on to Edmonton.
The Arizona preview.
Yeah, save with them because we're going to start our previews today. And so what I'm doing on Hockey Buzz is, we've had a tough couple years here in hockey world. Everybody, and not just hockey world, but everywhere. We've had a rough couple times, and I figured it was, we're looking to do my previews. I could do the same thing that we always do. Who's new, who's out, what's their problem, what's bad, what's wrong. But instead, I thought, in terms of everything that's happened, let's just do the most positive previews I can for all 32 teams. So that's what I'm going for here. And
and I'll bring the negative.
I'm not worried about that. So so what I did was I decided that I would do my series, which is going to be called "Why the Blank Will Win the Stanley Cup." And today we're starting off with Edmonton. So we're going to talk about why the Edmonton Oilers will win the Stanley Cup today, and everybody here, of course, will agree with that. With my statement on why the Edmonton Oilers will win the Stanley Cup, and in the most positive of ways. So let me just give a couple of reasons first, and then you guys can just great. Okay, all right. This is a team that is definitely, we sit there and the most criticism that they were getting are they've lost some really great players on defense for not a whole lot return. Obviously, they lost Larson for nothing. They did get a player back for Bear, but who I think could be an interesting player for them in Fogle. But they went out, and they, so are they going to be any better from that? They did on defense. We'll talk about that in a second. They, I'll say this: they went out. Those guys that they had have done nothing for them. They have been a team that has just floundered and fallen apart each time they get to the postseason. They've had really some of the worst postseasons in memory the last couple, especially this last one. So why not change things up? Why are we tied to Adam Larson? He's a good player, but why do we want him to be the cornerstone when that cornerstone has done nothing for us? Instead, you get a guy who's won a couple Stanley Cups to come in. You do, and you get a guy who wanted to go there, who chose to go there. In Duncan Keith, this is where he wanted to play. He saw some possibilities there, so he's going there. And you back that up with getting a couple other guys, and Cody Ceci, who has had his ups and downs. I'm not a biggest Cody Ceci fan, but he was very serviceable for them last year. And I think the emergence of Evan Bouchard, who is a way better player than people realize, and you got to give the Oilers credit for one thing, Russ, that they brought him along pretty slowly, considering
They did. Yep.
I mean, and they've definitely needed him. They've needed a player. They've needed a player like him, and yet they have not done the thing that a lot of other teams will do when they need that position filled. Put him in there.
That's fair.
And I think this year we'll see the benefits of that. I think you'll see something out of Evan Bouchard. In the forward position, it was all two players. All McDavid was all Draisaitl, and to me, this has to change in a very similar way to what the Penguins did when it was all Crosby and all Malkin. The Penguins avoided playing Crosby and Malkin together as much as they could, even though that was a temptation in the early on because they weren't very good when they started with Crosby and Malkin. But they avoided playing them together because they had depth. So what did the Oilers do? They went out and they got themselves some depth. Zach Hyman, perfect kind of player for them to grab. They definitely spent a lot for him, but he showed before that he can play with star players, which not everyone in the NHL can do. He's also shown a tendency to be very good in the room, very good, just a very good guy, and I think he's going to be a perfect fit and allow them to play Draisaitl and McDavid apart. More often.
That's where I quibble. Well, there's a number of things I quibble on.
We'll get there. I'm almost done. Okay. They signed Yamamoto. Yes, we talked about it yesterday. That for what I think is a really good deal. Like I think Yamamoto, even though he did struggle last year, has it in him to become a 20 goal scorer in this league. I still believe that, and I think that so for 1.2, that's pretty good. I also think Jesse Puarvi will be interesting this year to watch because eventually he's going to catch up to the culture that's been killing him, and eventually this year he's gunning to be on Team Finland, like we talked about when we did our Team Finland thing. So I think you can see something out of him. I think the two guys, and last I'll end with Fogle and Perlini, two guys they picked up. Perlini had a terrible year last year in Detroit, Kevin. I'm sure you can attest to that. But before that, he was something. He was a rising second, third line player in this league.
I think that time may have passed, though.
Yeah, time may have passed. We'll find out. Warren Fogel's they gave up a lot to get Fogle. Bear's a good player. He's going to be a potentially good player. Warren Fogel's a tough guy. He's got a very tenacious guy. It's something the Oilers didn't have a lot of. Tenacity. I think Fogel's a good fit for them. I see where they're going with that. I didn't like them trading Bear. Granted, I didn't like that, but I think when and we'll end up with goal because Mike Smith, had like arguably a borderline Vezina year last year. When you look at all the stats, he really was something else. Now he's not. You expect that all the time? No. But does he have one more kick in the can in him?
Yeah,
perhaps. And if he does, the Edmonton Oilers will win the Stanley Cup. That's my end of argument. Or if Stalock just becomes like some mysteriously great pie.
Our Lord and Savior, Alex Stalock. Crying out loud.
I know your opinion's back, so I'm going to start with Kevin on this because then we'll go to you guys. But Kevin, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me the Oilers will not win.
Well, you are wrong.
Okay.
But
I'm recording that.
Take your time in deciding, Kevin.
No, well, it's just too much. I mean, a little bit of revisionist. I thought Russ was polite to you on this revisionist on Bouchard. They weren't being patient with him because they thought that was good strategy. He just wasn't ready. And last season, in the short time that he was playing in Edmonton, he actually looked pretty good. And the reason he looked pretty good is because his defense had started to come together. That was holding him back. He just wasn't ready to play.
Okay.
So that wasn't their plan. That was just how it unfolded. But I do think there is some potential there of him being the player that they hoped he was when they drafted him. I like what they did with Hyman. I think he's going to change that offense significantly because of his puck retrieval skills, his ability to go, in the corners. I think he'll make that offense better than it was. It was very important that they kept Nugent Hopkins. I think their offense is good enough to compete for a cup. And they've at least, as you mentioned, changed their defense up enough to where, there's some hope that it might be better.
Right.
But, it's just hope. Like it's not a given. Duncan Keith's best years were actually a long time ago. But they did get Darnell Nurse signed up. They, maybe overpaid to get him, but that's what they needed to do. Losing Adam Larson was a much bigger deal than I think you painted it to be. But I do think one thing that you say is one thing that you do occasionally hear when you're having an honest discussion with general managers who say things like, I get that he's a good player, but we just haven't won with him. We got to do something different.
Yeah.
So I do think that's what they're trying to do here by changing it up a little bit. I hated the Cody Ceci, the acquisition. I thought that was really a bad move. Every place he goes, they complain about him. I just don't think that's enough to help that team improve. But they do have Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. So when you got two of the top 5 players in the league offensively,
and the top player,
and the top player, and you got a chance to win if it comes together. Smith, the Vezina comment was too much, but he was very good last year.
Yeah,
he did a really good job for him. But it's still a black mark on the organization that they couldn't improve their goaltending.
Yeah.
If you really believe you're close, you should really go out and be as aggressive as you can. Even if it's to bring in a backup that you think, well, what if he could challenge, for that number 1 spot. So I like Edmonton's chances in that division, but I don't see them as a prime contender.
Here's the funny thing. So we'll start with Mike Smith. Regular season's regular season.
Right.
During the playoffs, he had a 9.12. I can't say that was good. That's like average to below average in the playoffs. Matter of fact, 9.14 is what Philip Grubauer had, and that got him traded. So that basically got him dealt. So if you look at it that way, it's like, so Mike Smith, if he does a 9.12 again, they go nowhere again.
A 9.12 in Edmonton is way better than a 9.14 on Colorado. I'm going to argue that 9.12 in Edmonton. That's the team.
Argue that. The number is relative to the league, not relative to the team.
No, but it's irrelevant. Save percentage. I'm trying not to argue, but save percentage is often forgotten about the quality of shots, which the quality of shots that Mike Smith's facing for that 9.12 is way different than the quality of shots.
His GSAA is in the minus. He's a -1 GSAA in the playoffs. That's not very valuable to your team.
Yes, playoffs. No, there's no question.
Well, the playoffs is what really matters here.
Right.
The playoffs is if I'm signing Mike Smith and hoping against hope that I could get past the first round in the playoffs, the only way I do it is with him not in net. He's not going to be the reason they move on in the playoffs. It's going to be some other goalie they have or pick up at the deadline or something else. Their defense is average in the league. After you get past their top 3, it's not great. There's a lot of question marks. If they picked up more grit, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, they needed more scoring. You can't have like 3 guys essentially run your team in scoring and then just get little drips and drabs everywhere else, or you get these big peaks and valleys. And that's what they have. They're going to make the playoffs. I get that. But beyond that, no. They won't even sniff a Stanley Cup.
All right.
Mike.
Yes. I made the statement on our little group chat, and I stick with it, that in any other division, this team doesn't make the playoffs. In the Pacific, they'll finish 2nd or 3rd because the Pacific is probably the weakest division in the NHL. They didn't improve their goaltending. I mean, unless Alex Stalock goes to Lords and becomes a completely different player, their goaltending is subpar at best. And Mike Smith had a great year last year, but he's 40, and you've seen in history older goaltenders drop like a stone. Now, is that guaranteed? No, he could have a good year, but Mikko Koskinen is below average, being paid the most of any of the three goaltenders, and he's barely an NHL goaltender. So their goaltending is not improved. Their defense, I think, is a net minus from last year. I mean, when Clefbaum was healthy and Larson, I wasn't particularly a big Adam Larson fan, but he was a competent 4 or 5. Now he's gone. They've traded Ethan Bear, who was one of their best young defensemen, to Carolina. Clefbaum's career is in jeopardy, and they bring back the defensive wizard Tyson Barrie and Cody Ceci, who is everybody's candidate for the Norris. And
Barrie was really good for him. Barrie was very good for them last year, Mike.
It was because they used, unlike Toronto, they didn't try to make him into anything that he wasn't. He's an offensive defenseman. He's a puck rusher. He's a power play quarterback. And if you keep him to that, he's effective. But he's not somebody who you're going to put out there with 1 minute and 20 seconds left in the third period up by a goal.
He's going to tell us exactly what Duncan Keith's role is and how it makes them better.
Yeah, Duncan Keith. If Duncan Keith is a caretaker like Chara for Dobson, if he's a caretaker for Evan Bouchard, then I think he could be a great help to this team. But right now, their defense, I think, is slightly worse than it was last year. And at forward, okay, Hyman is going to help you, definitely. I think Hyman, he played great with Matthews and Marner. Matthews and Marner and what they do are different than what McDavid and Draisaitl do. So I'm a little concerned about how that meshes, and I don't think that the addition of Zach Hyman is going to allow you to split up them, because eventually they always go back to putting Draisaitl and McDavid together. They always fall back.
But they've never had anybody like Hyman, so I don't think they have to do that this year.
Fogle is a good depth forward, but honestly, I think the solution to their forward problems in terms of depth are the advancement of Yamamoto and Puljujarvi. If they advance and they play better, then their depth problems are taken care of. You can't win the Stanley Cup. Yeah, no, they will not win the Stanley Cup. You can't depend on a bonehead like Zach Kassian to not be what he is, which is Zach Kassian. He'll get suspended 2 or 3 times because he has no impulse control. And guys like Kyle Turris on this roster and Devin Shore, they're just they're just sort of there. They really don't. They have some young guys, and Russ can attest to this, like Tyler Benson. Mm-hmm. Or Ryan McLeod, who may deserve an opportunity to play in the league this year.
It's hard to break in with Tippett, though.
And unfortunately,
that's something I want to bring up. Tippett for a second, and when if you're finished, Mike.
The only thing was, it was unfortunate that Dylan Holloway got hurt. And he's going to be out for 2 to 3 months. He might have had an outside chance of making the team, or but now
he was already in Wisconsin, so it would have had to be on the back end.
Okay, on the back end. Okay.
So what I want is, and Kevin, I'm going to ask you this: how does Dave Tippett still have a job? like what coach could have the kind of playoff failures that he's had? I like Dave Tippett. I think he's great, but what?
Yeah, I think he gets so much respect as a kind of a defensive coach.
Yeah,
and yet that defense hasn't gotten better. Which is really remarkable when you think about it. And because that's what he's been known for his whole career. But he's one of those guys that has developed a reputation, and he survives based on that reputation.
And it's interesting because but even guys with reputations like Laviolette's and people like that, if they go down in the ways that Edmonton went down the last 2 playoffs, don't survive.
Yeah. Well, but Laviolette's, I think his temperament, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt just because, he can be a little difficult to deal with.
Right.
So when his team goes south, they're ready to move him out.
It's easier.
Where I think Tippett is, he has a good rapport usually with his general manager. So if things don't go well, I think he gets more of the benefit of the doubt than say a guy.
It usually seems like the value in Tippett is to be on a team that doesn't spend a lot of money, maybe doesn't have the greatest roster, and get great results. He's got the opposite here, and he's not getting the greatest results.
No,
they have money to spend. They have, and he has some great players, better than he's ever had in his whole career, really.
Yeah,
but don't you think it's easier? At least I've always felt this, and boy, coaches would not agree with me on this. But I think it's actually easier to make a team look competitive than it is to take that final step. And
that's probably true.
Yeah. But
I agree with you on that.
I mean, because you've seen guys that have taken really poor teams and just made them, through smoke and mirrors and all sorts of things. Look at Barry Trotz's early years with Nashville.
Right.
Yeah.
When they had nothing. But, what did you hear for like 6-7 years? Boy, that Predators team is competitive. Barry Trotz.
Yeah.
They always play hard, So.
But to answer your question, ask Mike Babcock, because the last 7 years in Detroit, he didn't get past the first round, and then he didn't get past the first round 3 times in Toronto. I mean, he survived all those times with a lack.
Here's the weird thing: if I told you what Dave Tippett's record was in the playoffs, you'd be stunned. It's 31-40.
Yeah. Yeah, he had that one run in Phoenix in Arizona in 20.
Yeah, you take that run out, and you're really
You take out the one run in Phoenix and the one run in Dallas, and it's pretty mediocre.
Yeah,
mediocre.
And this is
I love Dave Tippett. Like, he's one of the class people in the game. So I'm not trying to sit here and rip him. I'm just saying that logically,
this is reality.
Logically, should not still have a job based on what everybody else seems to be held accountable for.
Well, it's a result-oriented business,
right?
Right.
That's why.
And this is
yet there's Dave Tippett, swept in the first round.
Yeah.
And this is meaningless to the result of the season. But I have to say that, Ken Holland is a great reputation, is a great general manager, but the signings that he made this year, I mean, I like Darnell Nurse. I think Darnell Nurse is a very good defenseman. He's, again, 9.25 is bordering obscene. He had a really good year, but he's being paid more than PK Subban, and Subban got that contract after winning a Norris, and is being paid almost in the same zip code as Doughty and as Erik Karlsson. And all those
Mike, when you say that, when you say Darnell Nurse, and this is something I want your opinion on, Kev, is like you say Darnell Nurse, and everybody's like, well, they had to give him that contract because it's Edmonton and they needed him to stay there. But I've also heard people say that, you might not want to live in Edmonton, but that's sure a team that you wouldn't mind playing with. Like you go to play for.
I'm of the mind that they had to give him that to keep him. Like it was essential.
I think so too.
They did that, and he's a good defenseman. So when we say he's overpaid, he's probably overpaid by $1 million or so. But,
right, something like that.
But that's the reality. Like Mike, when you say those things, you're just not living in reality. Right. The reality is if you're in Edmonton and Darnell Nurse comes up, you got to pay him. Like there's just no whatever it is.
It may be the reality, Kevin, in the sense that, like, okay, they had to give Ryan Nugent Hopkins the 8 years. They had to,
exactly. Yeah.
They were going to sign him to a long-term deal, but they gave him the 8 years to spread the AAV out to be able to fit other players in. But, okay, he's signed through age 36. Zach Hyman is signed through age 36. He's 29 years old. More than likely, by the time when their window of opportunity starts to dissipate, Ken Holland will be sipping a Mai Tai in Florida. Because, in 3 or 4 years, those contracts will be boat anchors. But
not if they're winning.
I don't know. At the end of them, they're going to be, but I don't think it'll be that soon.
No, I don't think so, and not if they win. I mean, if they win, it's not. It
that's
doesn't.
The price you pay, right?
I mean, they losing Clefbaum, the way they did, losing Larson, they were stuck with Nurse. Nurse had them over the barrel, no question about it. He had them. Very few people have more negotiating power, than he had.
I think my overall point with the Oilers is you have 2 of the best players in the league. You have a fine defenseman in Nurse. You've spent to the cap, and you're still remarkably flawed. Yep. And that's the thing. If you spend all that money, if you allocate it correctly, then you should be close to like what Colorado and Tampa Bay are, and they're not in the same league.
That's where I'll defend Ken Holland, because when he got there, it wasn't even close to allocating correctly. And he had to get rid of Lucic's contract, and he had to do a lot of different things even to get to this point. And unfortunately, at this point, I can't even tell you they're getting out of the first round.
Well, the other thing that's never brought up, but it's certainly true, is places like like Edmonton, and it used to be Florida, although I think Bill Zito's changing that.
Mhm.
Where players don't want to go, Winnipeg, Columbus, they're really at a cap disadvantage because they have to overpay players to get them to stay. And go ahead.
No, I was just saying Kevin Cheveldayoff learned that lesson this offseason, Kev, because what he did was he traded for players that had term. So they had no option other than to go to Winnipeg. Brendan Dillon has 3 years left in his contract. So I think Nate Schmidt has 4. He traded for guys who had term. So they couldn't use that leverage to say, I don't want to play in Winnipeg, and you have to pay me $1 million more. No, we're not going to.
Well, and I think the point you raised earlier about it shouldn't be that way in Edmonton because they have Connor McDavid, but that usually only works with forwards. Like if you're a forward and you're looking and you're thinking, wow, if I go there, like I'll be the best scorer on the team. Well, I'll play with Connor McDavid. Then you might be able to go. But
or Draisaitl. I mean, you're playing with
if
you're a top 6 forward, you're playing with one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So it shouldn't be like that, but Nurse was a defenseman, so they had to overpay. But those teams really are a disadvantage when if they're places that are not destination places for players to go because they're what's their cap different is maybe $5 million that they have to overpay. More. I don't know, maybe even more. I don't know.
I would say so. There's your optimistic look on the Edmonton Oilers today, folks. One person saying they're going to win a Stanley Cup, and 3 people saying they're nowhere close. No, but that's tomorrow. I will be discussing why the Buffalo Sabres will win the Stanley Cup, and we will have that debate tomorrow.
You know what you can say though, with few exceptions. Every time you make your spiel, you'll say, "Yeah, but the Montreal Canadiens made the final this year."
That's it.
If the Canadiens made the final, anything is possible.
That's right. Anything is
possible. And you know what? A few years ago, the New Jersey Devils made it. And a couple of. I mean, there's always some surprise team, but they usually don't win. They usually don't win. They end up.
They usually don't win. They get very close. You're right. Like there's always one team that just.
We do have a little breaking news. It came out a little earlier, but I think it got lost. Travis Zajac has retired.
Oh yeah, I know. Okay.
Yeah, he signed the 1-day contract with the Devils, which I know that Ross always.
I just love those. In fact, Islander fans were asking if you could bring any Islander back to sign a 1-day contract, who would it be? And I wrote Alexei Yashin.
They just did it with Chara.
You don't like that either? The traditional?
No, I don't like that. No, I think it's horrible. Like, if you left the team, you left the team. No, but if you left the team.
Not me. I didn't say that.
Have you no heart? Have you no sentimentality in your soul?
Honestly. This is the pants all over again.
No, it's not. Because if you left the team, then you left the team. If you really wanted to be back on that team, it's probably in your power to sign a real contract with that team before you couldn't play anymore. Not when, now that my career's over, I kind of want to go back and sign a 1-day contract so the fans will like me again. No, it's not real.
But sometimes those players are traded away against their desires.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
it doesn't
bag. It's a mixed bag, those guys that come back. Like, I don't have any problem. I don't know what the big deal is. If you're not interested, don't watch.
I don't watch. It's fake.
Do they get paid for that day? Do they get paid for that day? I guess they do, right?
Yeah. They get $1.
But no, there's a league minimum. So don't they have to be at least at the league minimum?
No.
Don't they get 1 day of league minimum pay?
No,
it's not a contract.
I don't think so. I just always had that it was sort of acknowledged that it was the ceremonial thing. So
well, maybe They really then why do you even?
You don't get paid when those things happen. It's the opposite.
If they do get paid, I volunteer to all 32 NHL teams to sign me to a 1-day contract as long as you pay me.
The 1-day contracts are dumb.
Well, there you have it. I like it, Russ. I mean, you have no heart, no sentimentality. Just let it happen. Just say they're dumb.
Just remember,
that's right.
It wasn't me that said this.
Mike's rubbed off on you. I was about to say.
No. Are you okay with it, Mike? Are you okay with the 1-day contract?
I don't really care either way. It's like
care. That is the proper attitude. Yeah. That is the proper attitude.
I don't know. I respect Russ's.
So when did they start? Let's go back and find out when they started. Like when Jackie Robinson retired, he didn't sign a 1-day contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He just retired. He got traded to the Giants. Didn't want to play for the Giants, so
Right.
he just retired. Right.
Back when Jackie Robinson players were enslaved to their team. Should we go back?
Okay, but when did it
That's true,
start? When
too.
did the one-day contract start? Like, as an example, Tom Seaver, when he retired, he didn't retire a Met. He retired a Red Sox. He didn't go back and sign a one-day contract. He was done. That was it.
But because nobody had thought about it.
I'm sure they thought about it.
No, I don't know about that. I mean, I
You think so, but they don't until someone does,
right. Yeah.
Did Eric Lindros go back and sign a one-day contract with the Flyers?
No, he wouldn't have been allowed to. When he retired, they would have nothing to do with him. They wouldn't have done that.
Right. They have to be a beloved player. You know what I mean? That's the deal. So, that's why I think it's fine. Like, if the organization is willing to do it, like if Sergei Fedorov wanted to retire as a Red Wing, the Red Wings wouldn't have said, "Oh, come on in, we'll sign you to a one-day contract."
Okay, I'm going to answer to Eck. Lundqvist would never sign the one-day contract.
I bet he will. You don't think he will?
Nope.
No, it would have already happened if it already would have already happened. I just looked it up. The first one-day contract, I don't know if it's in professional sports, but it was Roger Craig, the former running back for the San Francisco 49ers. He went to Minnesota, and then he signed the one-day contract to retire as a 49er. So
see, why didn't OJ go and sign a one-day contract with the Bills when he retired? He left his 49ers.
Yeah,
because the Bills didn't want him as a
the Bills got a ridiculous package of draft picks for OJ that ended up building that 80s team that won a couple divisions. But let's just say OJ is a sore subject for the.
Okay, but Ron Hextall didn't sign a one-day contract with the Flyers.
No,
he was beloved.
You can list off
1,000 guys.
There's 7,500 guys. So you can probably list
until Eck turns off the show. That's
7,000 guys that didn't do that, but this wasn't a thing back then. So.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing back then. I know. No, but you don't have to do it to be beloved by your team. Like, you still come back. You can still.
Some guys that are just not interested.
Did Wayne Gretzky sign a one-day contract with the Oilers?
No, I know of. But he's still, of course,
you keep repeating that phrase, but I don't understand what that means. like if just because one guy didn't do it, another guy can't do it if they think it's a fun thing to do. So, I mean, do you do some things that I don't do?
Sure.
Yeah. and do I do some things that, the other way around? Well, yeah. So it's no big deal. I mean, if the guy wants to do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't.
Okay.
Oh man, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. I'm off to sign my one-day contract with Sportsnet. Have a great day. We'll talk to you all soon.